Welcome along to the Matchbook Football Podcast as we head into quarterfinal stages of the Champions League for big ties this week. All going to be previewed along with our best bets with Mark O'Haire and Adrian Clarke. Joining me, Daniel Hussey. Quick reminder into our welcome offer at the moment that we currently have on screen on YouTube. If you're not watching on YouTube, head over there if you prefer that rather than the podcast. But basically, it's POD50. Enter the bonus code POD50, POD50. And get £50 worth in free bets when you bet £50. Full T's and C's on screen there, but also available on insights.matchbook.com and, of course, matchbook.com as well. Let's get straight into it, lads. We're going to start with the two English ties, and the first one obviously being Arsenal versus Real Madrid. This is Tuesday night. We take a look at the betting that we currently have on matchbook.com. You can back Arsenal 244 favourites at home to Real Madrid, 335 underdogs, the same price for the draw. Both teams to score currently is 197 with no at even money. The Asian handicap line sees Madrid get a quarter goal head start at 10-11 or 1.91 on Matchbook, and the goal line is 2.5. So, Mark, we'll start with you. And firstly, is the right team favoured here? I guess give the listeners and viewers a bit of an insight. If it was on a neutral field, who is the favourites here?
Yeah, Real Madrid would be favoured if it was played at a neutral venue. Generally, you look to a price on the home side around 225 to 230 if the market believed these two teams were equal. So Arsenal rightly favoured because they're playing at Emirates Stadium, but as the market would suggest, Real Madrid would be slight fabs if we were playing at Wembley or anywhere else neutral. But yeah, looking forward to this. I'm sure Arsenal fans are as well, because it seems like their season is now sort of relying on this particular match and this competition. Mikel Arteta's team selection on Saturday highlighted that too. He's not really one to rest and rotate in a big style, but he did at Everton, and you'd expect the likes of Saka, Timber, Martinelli, Ødegaard, players all came on at Goodison Park to start here. And yeah, as the odds suggest, Arsenal do have a decent chance of getting a first leg result. I just feel they need to be at their absolute best to make that happen. The crowd and atmosphere at the Emirates will be there in support, and I'm sure they'll do their utmost to get Arsenal over the line. But when Arsenal are at their best, defensively, they're as good as any side in Europe. They also need to be clinical and efficient up top. And right now, I do have question marks over both boxes. No Gabriel, I believe, is a big blow. And if you just look at the Premier League, the points per game average drops from 206 to 167 when he's not involved or not started over the last few seasons. Saka would normally provide the big spark, and he's been missing obviously for quite some time. This will be his first start, so we'll have to see if he's at it from the very off. I'm sure he probably will be, but that is obviously a slight concern. And yeah, Arsenal, I guess, as we've seen throughout the campaign, can or have been a little bit toothless from open play at times too. That's not just borne out in the data, it's also the eye test too. There's been an over-reliance on set-piece goals at times. So there's a couple of problems, I think, in both boxes, which I'm sure they can iron out. When they're at the best, they can obviously beat any side on the planet. But this is not an easy game for obvious reasons. I do think the draw is a big runner, being the first leg of a knockout tie, and I do think there's not a huge amount of difference between these two teams. Arsenal will be the aggressors here. I'm sure Arteta will be well aware, though, of Real Madrid's counter-attacking ability. So I think it's a fascinating tactical matchup, because Arteta certainly is a sort of tactical. He prides himself really on that side of the game, whereas Ancelotti is very much the opposite. So Madrid obviously come into this game off the back of that loss to Valencia at the weekend when Vinicius missed a penalty. They had their third choice goalkeeper in goal. They basically got Carlos Corberán by Valencia, which can happen. But the flow of the game here, I think, will be very different. Tchouaméni is suspended, so the midfield is weakened. Modric is expected to start. Fede Valverde will play right back, which will weaken that midfield a little bit too. But Ancelotti has said himself he's been a little bit concerned by his side's kind of softness in defence at the time in recent weeks, and that is a slight concern if you're pro Real Madrid, which I'm going to be actually. But I just think they'll adopt a contain and counter approach here. They'll allow Arsenal possession, and I can just see opportunities for Real Madrid in transitions. They're too good not to have those opportunities, even against an Arsenal side with their full complement in defence. They're so dangerous, that superstar front three. I expect them to score, at Emirates Stadium. It's just whether Arsenal can outscore them, and I don't believe they probably will because of those issues in forward areas, really. So we'll have to wait and see whether I'm right or wrong there. But being a first leg quarter-final, I don't expect things to escalate here. I think Real Madrid, as we've seen in recent seasons, can be quite cautious away from home in Europe in knockout ties. So I quite like the look of Real Madrid double chance and under 3.5 goals here at close to evens, 196. Originally, I had Real Madrid plus a quarter, but going into the bet builder, we get a better price and almost a better line by just opposing a high-scoring game here. Happy to be with the underdog, knowing it's Real Madrid, knowing their pedigree in this competition. I know they've not always stood out, especially this season in those 2 legs against Atletico Madrid. But I think sometimes playing aside from your own country, especially a local rival, can sort of impinge on your own performance levels. But I expect them to be pretty on it this midweek. So, yeah, I think the draw, as I say, is a big runner. But if that's the case, I'd rather have the underdog on side too. So Real Madrid to avoid defeat and under 3.5 goals. You've got the 0-0, the 1-1, 1-0, 2-0, 3-0, 2-1. All reasonable options, I think, at close to even money.
Okay, yeah, so shop around on the Matchbook Betting Exchange. You can take our 100% over rounds on the exchange markets, or if you want to mess around a little bit with the bet builders and come up with a decent price that Mark O'Haire has here, Real Madrid double chance and under 3.5 goals, 196. Adrian, I want to ask a little bit of tactical questions. Say that first 15 minutes, Arsenal versus Real Madrid at the Emirates. How does that look like to you in your head right now?
I hope it looks really intense. I hope it's where Arsenal really come out of the blocks, get Martinelli, get Saka going if he starts. Certainly Martinelli's coming into it in good form, but yeah, it has to be intense. It has to be a quick start. You don't want to let Real Madrid settle. The atmosphere will be electric. I absolutely can't wait. Can't wait for this game. So excited to be there. It feels like I've been waiting years for this kind of match at Emirates Stadium, and will that count for or against Arsenal? We'll have to wait and see, but more likely to count for them. I think I think the atmosphere will be prickling, but Real Madrid are very experienced, aren't they? They can handle any kind of scenario. I would have thought it's not going to phase them, but defensively they're not great, are they? Let's be honest. And Mark's just said Valverde he thinks will be at right back. Well, Martinelli against Valverde, I like that. Midfield, Modric, fantastic player. But if Real Madrid are going to sit in, has he got, can he get around the pitch, for the full 90? Will Arsenal, use their dominance in that area? Declan Rice, for example, powering through box to box. So there are a lot of reasons, I think, for Arsenal to feel optimistic. I actually really like, and I'm not going to back this, I really liked Arsenal double chance and over 1.5 Arsenal goals. So Arsenal to score 2 and to not lose the game, 2.63. Really like that because Real Madrid have conceded, twice in 4 of their last 8 games. So that they've been leaking goals quite a lot this season. In the Champions League, just 1 clean sheet in 12 games. That was against Brest. So I think I'm really confident Arsenal will score in the game. Really confident. But I'm also confident that Real Madrid will score. Looking at their front three, Mbappe, knockout football. He's scary. He's got 10 goals in 16 games against English clubs. He tends to turn it on against the Premier League boys. Vinicius Jr., what a player. So, yeah, I think immediately it left off the page to me that both teams to score was backable. I just think Arsenal will score, but the Arsenal without Gabriel are likely to concede. Arsenal have a great record in the Champions League at home this season. Hadn't conceded any until that PSV game, where obviously they played a complete second string, and the game didn't matter. So effectively, in the matches that matter, Arsenal have shut out everyone that's come this season in Europe, but Real Madrid's a different kettle of fish. So both teams to score 1.97 is my pick. I've offered up that other one as a possible alternative. I just don't know what Arsenal are going to do with no Gabriel. Kivior played all right against Everton. It's a bit shaky against Fulham. I would prefer Ben White because I think he's a superior player to come in to partner William Saliba at centre half. But Ben White is undercooked as well at the moment and hasn't looked near his best the last few times he's played. So Really hard call for Arteta on team selection. The rest of the team kind of picks itself. It's just, will Saka get the nod or not? I have to be honest, even though he scored against Fulham, in the sort of 75 minutes of football he's had so far, or 65, it hasn't looked great. Saka, he's looked a bit quiet. Not many touches. Hasn't really been taking the players on. He just doesn't look anywhere near his sharpness, and that's totally understandable. Hasn't played for 3.5 months, so. But it's hard to leave him out of a game like this, isn't it? Bukayo Saka. So, yeah, two big calls for Arteta here. Got to get them right. Personally, I want White and Saka in the team, but it could go the other way, and it's Kivior and Nwaneri. So let's see what happens. But my selection here, I'm quite confident on this that both teams will score at Emirates Stadium. Arsenal will have enough to get about Real Madrid and get on the score sheet, but a clean sheet without Gabriel feels a stretch.
Yeah. Okay. Both teams have scored a good case, outlined by Adrian. 197, getting a bigger price than you tend to get in general, not just Champions League games, but maybe Premier League games as well. But this will be our £10 money back as a free bet if it loses. Podcast bet builders. This will be more marked than Adrian in terms of the couple of selections, but we've added 3 here. Madrid, double chance, both teams to score for Adrian, and under 3.5 goals for Mark. Effectively, it's 1-1 in the game, or 2-1 Madrid, 4.1 you're getting on Matchbook. Check that out on insights.matchbook.com. You get a £10 money back as a free bet if the podcast bet builder loses on Wednesday morning. Now let's go to the second English team in quarterfinal action. Very exciting here. PSG versus Aston Villa. We'll take a look at the betting we currently have on matchbook.com. Exciting to you. Look at the prices. PSG 142. Aston Villa currently a 7-1 shot on Matchbook 8.0. The draw is 5.6. Both teams to score here. Yes, 182. The Asian handicap line will see Villa get a start at 1.25 goal at above even money as well. And the total here is 3.5, but unders is well favored at 167. So, Mark, I might actually start with you again, just on the point we were chatting off air. It's been a narrative, particularly after this weekend, about the Premier League's quality this season. And you have a sort of, or at least you're toying with the idea of, if the quality of the league domestically isn't great, maybe it is the time to be taking on a lot of these Premier League teams in Europe.
Yeah, this is a fascinating game. You've obviously got Unai Emery going back to his old club with the Villa side, but sort of found form. PSG knocking Liverpool out at Anfield, gathering real momentum, real belief that this could be their year, and they're well liked by the market, as you say there. But yeah, it's not just my own theory. I've seen it's been talked about quite a lot recently, really, as well. And I was chatting to a friend on Sunday about the Premier League's quality, and I think we have to acknowledge that this season has been one of the sort of worst in terms of quality in recent history. Liverpool sort of running away with the title without being as dominant as perhaps previous title winners have been, sort of just doing enough in a lot of their matches, and not really big. No one's getting anywhere close to them. None of the major teams have had great seasons at all. And then you look at the bottom 3, they've all been absolutely dreadful, really. So, no one's really stood out, apart from the likes of, the usual sort of sprinters like Bournemouth and Brighton, teams you don't expect to be there or thereabouts, kind of pushing for European positions. And if that theory holds out, then this is one of the worst quality Premier League seasons in a while. My friend was basically saying we have to oppose English clubs in Europe. And we've already seen PSG better Liverpool over 2 legs. Man City were done similar by Real Madrid. So perhaps this is Aston Villa's turn to sort of feel the heat a little bit. And they've had a great journey so far, but the majority of their best work has been done at Villa Park this season. They've lost 9 of 20 away games across Premier League and Champions League this season. But if you look at their record against stronger opponents, 1 point from 5 trips to the top 7 in the Premier League, conceding 2 goals or more in each of those games. The one they avoided defeat was at Emirates Stadium when they weren't very good and managed to burgle a 2-2 draw when being outplayed. In the Champions League, they've had quite a generous away schedule, but they lost at Monaco, they lost at Club Brugge, beat a very poor Leipzig side and Young Boys side. Obviously, Brugge in the knockout phase was a bit different, but that's a concerning form line for me. Even though we know Emery's got the pedigree in terms of knockout cup competitions, we know his experience, we know he'll have a plan. We've seen him in this kind of position before with a big underdog in a Champions League quarter-final, semi-final, and pulling out rabbits from hats. It's true too that they've had a new lease of life since January. Those signings in particular, they've won 7 on the spin and they've scored 11. Their new signings have scored 11 goals. in that sequence too, which is quite impressive, really. And they're all capable. And the brilliant thing about Villa right now is they've got such a big squad, but they're able to rest their frontline players at the weekend and bring in the likes of Rashford, Asensio, and Marlon, and still compete. But yeah, you kind of go back to PSG. Their form line, for me, holds more substance. They've had the look of sort of outright contenders since December, really. They're a young side, playing brave, penetrating football. They're humble, they're hardworking. There's a system in place. There's consistency too. Luis Enrique's fielded pretty much the same 11 for the last 3 or 4 Champions League games now. His ideals, his team ethic has kind of been imprinted on this team now. He's no longer doing the sort of Pep Guardiola thing of just chucking a random team and a selection sort of an hour before kickoff and expecting things to fall into place. The foundations are there. They're targeting an unbeaten domestic season, never done before in French football. They've lost just once in 29, and they've really stepped up in class in Europe too. So in terms of a bet and looking at the betting market, I do think PSG are very short at 142. Villa were 6.1 at Arsenal and 7.0 at Liverpool. They're 8.0. Actually, they're 8.4 now on the Matchbook Exchange, going away this midweek, which is a big price. But those away day efforts when stepping up in class do concern me. And I think the opportunity to back PSG in some way or form is still probably the way to go. So I've partnered PSG to win alongside under 4.5 goals. Comes in at 194, close to evens. I think that's a nice leap on the PSG price on the nose. Just 2 Villa away days have gone over that mark. This is Unai Emery away in a Champions League knockout tie. And I think you've got a range of good correct scores on side there to cheer on to. So happy to be pro PSG, despite thinking they are a little bit short still.
Okay, 142 into 194, combining the PSG win with under 4.5 goals. And Adrian, I guess the one caveat to what we were saying, and Mark touched on it there, is it's Unai Emery in a big game can set up his team in a certain way that can frustrate the opposition.
He can, and he's tactically astute. But I've also seen him, particularly when he was at Arsenal, overthink games massively. And I've seen him in big games get it horribly wrong as well. So he's not the perfect manager. He's got a good thing going at Aston Villa. There's no doubt about that. And he's doing a brilliant job. But he can get distracted by the opposition massively, and just focus on them. And on numerous occasions, I was quite puzzled by his approach when he was Arsenal manager. So maybe that's clouded my interpretation of him. And he's going back to his former club. I don't give Villa much chance here. I've got to say, I think that PSG are a fantastic team. Outstanding. We saw that against Liverpool. They should really, over the course of that tie, have won with a degree of comfort. I think, based on performance, that the front guys are electric, and I know that they rested, didn't they? Most, if not all, of their back four. I think at the weekend, Conte didn't play, Torres, Digne, Cash. So they can bring in the back four. They'll be nicely rested, but they're up against quality. Kvaratskhelia, Barcola, Doué, Dembele, whoever starts, they're all brilliant and having great campaigns. Look, PSG are 1.42. I think they're pretty much nailed on to win. If I'm honest, that's how I see it. They've won 16 of their last 17 matches, full stop. And Villa away from home don't convince me at all. Even though they've won, I think 3 or 4 on the spin, haven't they, on the road, Villa, over the course of this season, not so impressive on the road. They've won 4 away on the spin, but had lost 9 of their previous 12. So I don't think that should be forgotten, because this is such a step up in class for them. They have scored in 12 games in a row, though, Aston Villa, and we know that their bench is very strong in terms of attacking armoury. Whether Rashford starts or Watkins starts or vice versa, even Asensio is not guaranteed to start. There's a lot of options for them. Let's see what transpires. But I think PSG to win is great. But I tell you what, the jump that you get for PSG and both teams to score is massive. It goes from 1.42 to 2.92. This is a PSG side, as good as they are, they've conceded in 9 of their last 12 games at the Parc des Princes in all competitions. They're not watertight. They're not clean sheet kings. And as I said, they've scored Villa 12 games in a row. In the Champions League, Villa have scored in 7 of 10. So I give them a chance of getting one. But I think PSG are going to score, 2, 3 or more in the game. That's how I see it.
Okay, yeah. So that's PSG to win and both teams to score 292. We might lock in the safe bet for the guys. PSG to win and under 4.5 goals, 194. But look, if you do give Villa a squeak, 8.4, as Mark mentioned, currently on Matchbook. Most of the sportsbook at the time of recording are 7.0, 1 or 2 at 6.5 as well, with the odd one at 7.5. So 8.4 on Matchbook. Let's go to the third game, Bayern versus Inter. This is Tuesday night, and take a look at the betting we currently have on matchbook.com. Bayern 204 favs to Inter, who are 4.2 with the draw 365. Both teams to score currently 184. Plenty of movement in that market, as you can see on screen. The Asian handicap line is a double chance effectively for Inter at 194 plus 0.5 if you're playing Asian handicap, and 2.5 is the total unders available as the fab there at 195. Adrian was chatting to a Celtic fan only on Thursday, and I asked him how has he been since that last minute defeat or on over the 2 legs in the Allianz Arena, and he said he's still not over it and hasn't been the same since. So it's just a not known for him with Bayern and Celtic. He expected Bayern to get through in extra time, but it's that not knowing. But basically what I'm getting at is, like, you can't forget how poor Bayern were in that second leg and just about got over the hump there to beat Celtic. They host an Inter side the first leg. How do you see it going?
Yeah, that was a real surprise, wasn't it? How bad they were in that game, but by and large they've been scoring a lot of goals. The forward players are in good form. They're not the perfect team. I don't think they're one of the strong. They're not the strongest side left in the competition, but this is Bayern Munich at home, and Bayern Munich at home in the Champions League are near on unbeatable. They're unbeaten in 22 home matches in the competition, 117, drawn 5. Last team to beat them was PSG in April 2021 at the Allianz. So, yeah, this is the sort of game they don't get beaten. So I think that has to form the starting point, really, of what you're looking at here. Throw in the fact that Inter Milan aren't quite as impressive at the moment as they were earlier on this season. Certainly not defensively. Like earlier on this season, they just weren't letting in any goals, were they? But they have conceded 6 goals in their last 8 away games, or conceded, 6 of their last 8. So that's not like Inter. They're starting to let in a few goals on the road. Just not sure they're coming into this game in top form. But this is Inter in Europe, and Inter in Europe are super solid, aren't they? 12 of their last 13 away games in the Champions League have gone under 3.5. So they never seem to let anything go or escalate on the road in Europe. They set their stall out to be solid, and that's what they'll do here. So I think that if you can go with under 3.5 goals, which I think is absolutely fair and right. Like I say, 12 of 13. Bayern did struggle against Celtic. They don't usually struggle to score goals at home, but having seen Inter play Arsenal and how resilient and resolute they can be in these big games, I don't think Bayern will run away with things and score a hatful of goals here. So under 3.5 goals paired with Bayern not to lose, and you get it at a backable 1.75. It's not a huge price. I get that. But I think you have to go with Bayern's record over a long sample size. And they are just an exceptionally tough nut to crack in Europe on their own patch. Inter are capable of nicking a 1-0 there. But as I said, of late, not quite as solid. So I expect Inter to concede at least 1 goal here. So Bayern double chance and under 3.5.
Okay, Mark, you've landed on the same selection as well.
Yeah. I actually found this quite a difficult betting heat because, on the surface, Bayern at odds against was interesting. They were 178 when hosting Leverkusen in the second leg, despite leading from the first leg. Inter were 3.5 when they went away to Leverkusen earlier in the tournament and lost in the last minute. But then you look at Bayern's injury news. No Neuer No Musiala, no Upamecano, no Coman, no Davies, no Pavlovic. They can cope in forward areas because they've got more than enough ability there with Elise, Sane, Gnabry, Muller, Kane, loads of options up front. Midfield, you've got Kimmich alongside probably Goretzka rather than Paulinho. But defensively, there is question marks over a defence bit lined up on Friday night with Urbig in goal, Stanisic, Kim, Dyer and Lima. That is a weakness. My concern really for being pro-Inter is their approach, and Adrian's outlined it already. Ordinarily, they look to try and be solid first and foremost, keep things tight on their travels, look for opportunities on the break. It's largely worked for them. They've been quite effective on the road this season. But are they brave enough to go to Bayern in Munich and sort of hurt this Bayern defence, this patched up Bayern defence? I'm not so sure. Bayern will control the contest, and that's certainly how the flow of the game was when Inter went to Leverkusen. They allowed Leverkusen possession, territory, and eventually succumbed. And that's my concern about being pro-Inter here. Unders, I thought, was a real runner here, close to evens for under 2.5 goals, just because of how the match might play out. But yeah, I ended up on the same selection at 175. Inter have only lost 5 games altogether all season. But as I say, one of those was that match at Leverkusen. They've had quite a taxing week as well coming into this game. They had the derby in the Coppa Italia last midweek, so had to go full throttle for that. Went away to Parma at the weekend, did make a few changes, but they weren't great. You can kind of guarantee they'll be well drilled, stick to their 3-5-2. It's just whether they're capable of scoring multiple goals, and I'm not sure they will just because of that pragmatism in the first leg. So it's a shame this game isn't at the Allianz Arena, because if this was the first leg at San Siro, I'd definitely be looking for something pro-Inter here and have a much more confident selection. But it's not a strong play by any stretch. Should be interesting enough, this match. I'm looking forward to it, but I'd give Bayern a very slight edge just because they're at home, even with those injury issues, and just knowing how Inter will probably set up.
Okay, yeah. So both the guys agreeing on Bayern double chance and under 3.5 goals, but maybe not the strongest pick there. 175 at the time of recording. We go to our final game, Barcelona versus Dortmund. This is Wednesday night. Barcelona 1.4 at home versus Dortmund, who are 8.6. The draw is 5.8. Both teams score 171. Dortmund are getting a 1.5 head start at 192 on the Asian handicap line, and 3.5 is the total, and unders is 184. Now, Adrian, you'll be interested to hear, just given the way the draw has gone, Barcelona are favourites for the Champions League, 4.4 currently. Margie ahead of PSG and then Real Madrid. Do they look like a Champions League winning team, or is it maybe just the way the draw has gone?
They could win it, yes, absolutely they do. They've got loads of talent, haven't they? Barcelona, goodness me. They score goals for fun under Hansi Flick. I really like him. I mean, his teams are, they score goals, don't they? Liked him at Bayern as well. No, they're on the better side of the draw, no doubt about that. And I think Dortmund and Villa are the two weakest links in the last 8. Even though Dortmund, did ever so well to get through. I think that this might be a stretch for them. Obviously, they got to the final last year. They were a good team, but Barcelona at the new camp, it's not the new camp, is it? But Barcelona on home turf score lots of goals. All 5 home games in the Champions League this season have seen over 2.5 goals. 4 of those 5 games have seen over 3.5 goals, and Barca have scored between 2 and 5 in all 5 of their home games in the Champions League so far this season. And I think Dortmund, to be honest, have ridden their luck a little bit in the competition. The stats do bear this out. The goalkeeper, Kerbal, who's had a great tournament, his stats are crazy. He's prevented 6.9 extra goals, according to our pals at Opta, in the Champions League alone. They should have conceded, 7 more goals, basically, en route to this stage, but for his save. So I think Barcelona can score multiple goals here. The thing is, Dortmund actually they always seem to find a way to score themselves on the road. They've scored in 11 straight games in the Champions League on the road. I think that goes all the way back to when they beat Newcastle. You remember that game in that sort of group of death time. Every game they've played away since, they've scored in this competition. In all competitions this season, scored in 11 and the last 14 away. So it wouldn't surprise me if they got on the score sheet against Barcelona, but I can see Barcelona having too much for them, with Rafinha and Yamal and all these guys that have been in such blistering form this season. Hansi Flick's Barca, by the way, have got the highest goals per game average in the competition's history this season. 3.2 goals per game, 32 goals in 10 games. So, that speaks for itself. I'm going with Barcelona to win and over 2.5 goals. I just don't know if Dortmund are good enough to handle them. 1.81.
Okay, yeah. Fascinating stat on the goals in Europe, Mark. It's not too far off it in La Liga as well. I think 83 and 30, which is, 2.7-ish, isn't it?
Yeah, no doubt about their attacking ability. They've already played Dortmund this season. They won 3-2 away in Germany, and but a lot's changed since then. Actually, more on the Dortmund side. I'm not completely convinced we'll get the sort of 5-6 goal kind of game again this time around. I did look at Adrian's selection personally as well. I thought that was a fine way in, but whether it will escalate into sort of 4, 5, 6 goals, I'm not completely certain. Goals normally do follow Barcelona around, but it's more the basis on Dortmund appointing Niko Kovac. He started to get a bit of a tune out of this Dortmund team. It's taken quite some time, but back-to-back wins, tricky assignments on paper against Mainz and Freiburg. They've come through with flying colours. The confidence is back. There's belief as well, not just for Europe, but for a potential sort of late charge towards Champions League qualification in the Bundesliga. And even when they haven't picked up positive results, performances against Augsburg and Leipzig, they dominated throughout, but just failed to finish really. And 2 defeats in 9 doesn't look fantastic on paper, but it's a big improvement on where they were. And the crucial kind of elements that have been missing for most of this season, which we saw in droves kind of going towards the Champions League final last season, have kind of returned. The bite, the grit, the resilience. They're not the same soft touch they were in the first 6 months. And this weekend was quite significant. Guirassy and Adeyemi both scored for the first time in a month too. So players in forward areas in confidence again. So yeah, Barcelona's ceiling is obviously far, far higher. And Hansi Flick knows all about Niko Kovac. He was his assistant at Bayern. So he'll know his mindset. He'll know his thought process coming into this clash, you'd assume. Regardless, I think we expect Barca to be front foot, very proactive, look to score goals. But yeah, they either sort of rack up a massive score or they can be frustrated, as we saw at the weekend against Betis. And they've had a couple of hiccups this season when teams have managed to get under their skin, provide a bit more of a solid approach. Atletico have twice gotten results in Barcelona, Betis at the weekend, Atalanta, Alaves, Rayo, Getafe, all restricted to Barca to 1-0 wins. Leganés and Las Palmas even won away in Barcelona. So there is a blueprint, I think. And Dortmund, I do believe, will try and adopt that approach. They can be semi-successful at it. We saw it last season on the way to the final. Remember the Atletico Madrid game when they went away? They got battered for the most part, but still managed to sort of engineer a result that got them through over 2 legs. So I'm not sure they're going to get blown away as the market suggests they will. So yeah, I looked at Adrian's selection. I also looked at Dortmund plus 1.5 goals here. But I'm going to land on Barca to win and under 4.5 goals just because of the price. It's odds against, actually. And if it does play out in the fact that Dortmund can frustrate Barca for large periods, we've got the 1-0, 2-0, 3-0, 4-0, 2-1, 3-1 all on our side, and odds against price. They'll all be favourites in the correct score market, really. And it's difficult to sort of imagine Dortmund restricting Barca to less than 2 goals, really. Lewandowski's got 38 goals for the club this season. Rafinha's got 11 just in the Champions League. Not even mentioned Lamine Yamal or any of the midfield, actually, or any of the supporting cast off the bench. Ferran's had a fantastic couple of weeks too. So too much firepower, I believe, but I do think Dortmund will be looking to try and dig in and stay in this tie to take it back to Germany for the second leg. That tends to be Niko Kovac's way. So I'm going to back them to try and keep it relatively low scoring.
Okay, it's Barcelona win under 4.5 goals, 2.05, but we'll lean towards Adrian just in case it gets out of hand, and that's with a over 2.5 goals with the Barcelona win. Get you 181. InsideStamMatchable.com, full recap of those bets, and if you do take 2 seconds and you're enjoying watching or listening, hit that like button and follow wherever you're subscribed to, and we will go to long shot time here. And Adrian, I mean, the Villa fans will come for you now with this. It goes pear-shaped, so take it away.
Yeah, I did think that I'm going to upset a lot of Brummies here with this selection. But look, it's not an easy set of games to look at this week. But I do think that PSG are a level above Aston Villa And Aston Villa had quite, as Mark pointed out earlier, had quite an easy ride, really, in terms of their away games in Europe so far this season. They've conceded a lot of goals on the road this year, and that's with the Unai Emery, the smart tactician that we all respect and rate. Well, Spurs still put 4 past his team. Palace put 4 past them. They lost 9 away games of 12 up until their recent run, which is really good. 4 wins in a row on the road, but I don't know if they're quite good enough to live with PSG. If PSG want to put this tie to bed, and I suspect that they will. I think Luis Enrique will look at this and look at Villa, and how passionate the fans are at Villa Park, and how difficult they've made it for teams at their own patch this season in the competition. He will want to take a handy advantage, in my opinion, and he's certainly got the forward line to let rip and to cause, guys like Matty Cash problems, Luca Digne at fullback. Those 2 guys, good players, but are they good enough to tame the PSG wide players if they're really on it? Dembele, one of the most informed players on the planet as well at the moment, up against the centre half. So I think there is a chance PSG can unleash here and score 4 goals. If you want to bet on PSG to win, and for any scoreline that includes them scoring at least 4 goals, then it's a long shot of 4.7. They have done it in 4 of their last 8 home games, PSG, and I'll rattle off the teams that they've beaten by scoring at least 4 goals in the last 8 home games. Lille, good team. Brest, good team in the Champions League. Monaco, good team. And Manchester City, not so good, but you know what I mean. Manchester City, the champions of England. So these aren't minnows that they've been sweeping aside. That they're decent outfits, and Villa I would put in the same category as Lille, Brest, and Monaco. So that they can do it. And look at the league table; that they're in the same category as Manchester City. I just think that PSG's class could be too much for Villa here. So 4.7. It's a long shot, but any other home win is what you'll find on the matchbook slate if you want to go and find it on correct scores.
Yeah, 4 of the last 8 games is quite outrageous stat, really. So any other home win, as Adrian said, head to correct score. You'll see it right at the bottom. Only exchanges do that. So I personally, I think if you're really pro a team and a big favorite, like Adrian touched on, it is a really good way of playing it and getting a really good price of 4.7. So Mark, you can lead in from your long shot to your best bets, but this is one of the 2 correct scores that will be covered in our podcast bet builder. 1-1 Arsenal Madrid.
Yeah, I mentioned I like the draw at the Emirates. I think Real Madrid can and will score against any side in Europe. Arsenal missing Gabriel, but I do think they are gettable too defensively. So yeah, the draw in BTTS at almost 4-1 was worth the look, I thought. But if you're going to go down that route, take the bigger price, 7.2 on the 1-1 correct score. Just doesn't feel like it's going to be a 2-2 or 3-3, in my opinion, at least. So especially in the first leg of a knockout tie at this stage of the Champions League. So 1-1 stood out there at 7.2 if you do like the draw. And best bet, I'm going to go back to Real Madrid double chance and under 3.5 goals at 196. Really looking forward to the game. Just feel Arsenal missing Gabriel, not having their central striker available. Concerns about Saka's fitness or his ability to be right at it for this match as well. I think Real Madrid will be quite happy to contain, quite happy to counter and take Arsenal back to Spain for the return leg. So I think the draw is a big runner, but we'd want Real Madrid on side as underdogs too. So I think they can ride out the first leg pressure, avoid defeat. And as I say earlier on, I'd be surprised if this game escalates to sort of 4, 5, 6 goals.
Madrid double chance under 3.5 goals. Mark's best bet on the slate, and Arsenal won. Real Madrid won his best long shot on the slate. Final word to you, Adrian. You're staying away from that game and heading to Barcelona's game against Dortmund.
I do think both teams to score, which was my pick in that game, is a good runner. I don't know. Mark's pretty much said that, hasn't he, in regards to his selections? But yeah, just to offer up something different, really, and to focus on a different game. I'm going to go back to the Barcelona one. I think that, I do take on board Mark's comments about Kovac and being quite pragmatic, and that they have made improvements. But I just think that this Barcelona, a little bit like PSG, the forward line, when they're at it on a big night in the Champions League knockouts, I think this is where they'll come to the party. They've been great at home in the Champions League going forward. All 5 home games have gone over 2.5 goals. 4 of them are going over 3.5. They've scored at least 2 in all of them. Some of them have scored 3, 4, and 5. Dortmund are always worth a goal on the road. Scored in 11 straight away games in the Champions League. So I could see them nicking 1, but I can certainly see Barcelona getting 2, 3. 2 or 3 really, maybe 4, but 2 or 3, 2 or 3-1 is how I'd see this. So yeah, Barcelona and over 2.5 goals. You don't need Dortmund to score here. The 3-0 will still come in for us. Flick has a great record. He's won 6 out of 6 against Dortmund. That's with Bayern and Barcelona. It's a club he likes playing against. Dortmund have a terrible record against Spanish opponents. Full stop. And I don't give them much chance of winning. I think Barca will win, and I think we'll see at least 3 goals in the game. So yeah, 1.81 on that.
Okay, Barcelona to win and over 2.5 goals versus Dortmund. Adrian's best selection 181, and as I mentioned, insights.matchbook.com. Get a full recap of the guys' picks, plus links to our Spotify, YouTube, wherever you want to watch or listen, and can of course check out matchbook.com. The best exchange markets available there, but also a lot of the bet builder bets that we have put up there. We'll be back on Thursday to preview another weekend's Premier League action, hopefully a little bit more exciting than maybe Sunday was for most watchers and listeners of that Manchester derby. So apologies if you had to sit through 90 minutes of that, but the Champions League should be good this midweek, and we'll kick on to the Premier League with Mark and Adrian. Have a good midweek. We'll chat to you on Thursday. Bye bye.